Sign the damn papers, Audrey. You're holding up a future that no longer includes you. Madeline, my mother-in-law, didn't just speak. She spat the words. She sat in my living room, looking at me as if I were a stain on her $5,000 silk rug. With a flick of her wrist, she tossed a manila envelope onto the table. My son is destined to lead Garrison Financial. He needs a woman who matches that power, not a housewife who's lost her spark. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. I felt a surge of white-hot adrenaline that made my fingers itch to strike. I turned my gaze to Dominic, who was standing by the window, his back to me. "Look at me, Dominic," I commanded. My voice was a low, dangerous growl. "If you're going to destroy this family, have the balls to do it to my face." He turned slowly, his expression cold and arrogant. "What is there to say, Audrey? Serafina is 28, brilliant, and she's the CEO's only daughter. Marrying her isn't just a choice, it's a career move. I'm tired of playing small. I'm tired of this average life with you." "Average?" I snapped, stepping toward him until we were inches apart. "I bankrolled your life. I worked double shifts while you were in grad school. I gave you 15 years of my life, and you call that average? Oh, please." Madeline rolled her eyes, lighting a slim cigarette. "We're being more than fair. We're giving you the house in the suburbs. It's worth $1,500,000. Most women in your position would be begging for that kind of payout." I whirled around to face her. "Shut up, Madeline. This isn't a business transaction, and you aren't the broker. You've spent every Thanksgiving for a decade whispering in his ear that he deserved better. Well, look at him now, a cheating coward who needs a daddy's girl to get a promotion. Don't you dare talk to my mother that way." Dominic stepped in, his face flushing red. "I'll talk to her however I want," I barked back, poking a finger hard into his chest. "You think you're a king now because you're sleeping with the boss's daughter? You're a parasite, Dominic. You crawled up my back to get where you are, and now you think you can just discard me? I'm moving on, Audrey. Serafina loves me. She's innocent, she's sophisticated, and she's everything you aren't." I laughed, and it sounded like shattering glass. "Sophisticated? She's a homewrecker who's barely older than a college student. And innocent? You're 42 years old, Dominic. You look pathetic chasing a girl who hasn't even seen a wrinkle yet." "Enough!" Madeline slammed her hand on the table. "You will sign those papers today. Dominic has to be at the Garrison estate by 8 p.m. to celebrate his new role as senior VP. He doesn't have time for your theatrics." "Theatrics?" I grabbed the envelope and ripped it in half, the sound echoing through the penthouse. "I'm not signing a single thing until I get what I want, and I want everything." Dominic's eyes widened. "What do you mean, everything?" "I want the house. I want the $5,200,000 in our offshore account, and I want the stocks," I said, my voice dropping to a deadly whisper. "Every single share." "You're insane!" Madeline shrieked, standing up. "That's over $7 million in assets! You can't strip my son of his wealth!" "Watch me," I hissed, turning on her. "I have the emails, Dominic. I have the records of you using company funds to buy Serafina that $85,000 diamond bracelet last month. If I take this to the board of directors, if I tell Mr. Garrison his new son-in-law is an embezzler, how long do you think your career move will last?" Dominic's face went from red to a ghostly, sickly white. His confidence evaporated in an instant. "Audrey, you wouldn't." "Try me." I dared him, my heart pounding with a fierce, vengeful joy. "I spent 15 years protecting you. I know where every body is buried. You want your clean slate with your princess? It's going to cost you every penny you've ever made. Otherwise, I'll burn your reputation to the ground before the sun sets." "You're a monster," Madeline whispered, her voice trembling with hatred. "No, Madeline," I said, picking up a pen from the desk and throwing it at Dominic's feet. "I'm a woman who's done being treated like an option. Now, draw up the new agreement. Give me my money, or prepare for the most public, humiliating scandal Chicago has ever seen." Dominic looked at the floor, then at his mother. The silence was heavy, suffocating. He realized he was trapped. He had underestimated the woman who had built him. "Fine," he muttered, his voice defeated. "You'll get the money. Just stay away from the Garrisons. Stay away from my life." "With pleasure," I said, a cold smile spreading across my face. I can't wait to see how long it takes for a girl like Serafina to realize she's married a man with nothing left to his name but his ego. I walked toward the door, my heels clicking sharply against the floor. I didn't look back. I felt powerful. I felt dangerous. Dominic thought he was trading an old car for a new model. He didn't realize he had just handed me the keys to his destruction. The transition was seamless. While Dominic chased a fantasy, I moved Caleb into a $2,800,000 brownstone and reclaimed my seat in the financial world. But the fury didn't fade. It just became focused. 3 months later, Dominic called. Not to check on Caleb, but to beg. "Audrey, I need a break on the child support. Just for 90 days, he stammered. Are you serious?" I paced my new office, my voice a whip. "You're the heir apparent to a billion-dollar empire, and you're short on $5,000? Where's your vision now, Dominic?" "It's just Serafina's father is controlling the cash flow until the wedding. He says you took too much in the settlement. Tell Mr. Garrison that if his future son-in-law can't afford his own son, I'll see him in court. Don't call me again." I slammed the phone down. Something was rotting in his paradise. Driven by a gut feeling, I drove to the Garrison Financial Building. I expected to find Dominic basking in luxury. Instead, I walked into a battlefield. "You lying gutter trash bitch!" Madeline's screech pierced the lobby. I pushed through the crowd of employees and froze. My mother-in-law, hair disheveled and face purple with rage, was clawing at Serafina. Crack! Madeline slapped the girl so hard her head snapped back. "You ruined my son!" Madeline shrieked. "You said you were Garrison's daughter. You promised him the CEO chair." Serafina didn't cry. Ba lunged back, ripping Madeline's pearl necklace off her neck. "I never promised him anything, you senile hag. Your son is a pathetic loser who heard what he wanted to hear. I'm Garrison's mistress, not his daughter. The lobby went silent. A collective gasp rippled through the staff. "Mistress?" I whispered, a dark, cold smirk forming on my lips. I caught the eye of a former colleague in the crowd. "What happened?" "Dominic got fired an hour ago," he whispered, leaning in. "Embezzlement. The real Mr. Garrison found out Dominic was sleeping with his mistress and used him as a scapegoat for some missing funds. He was never the son-in-law. He was the fall guy." I looked at the center of the room. Security was dragging a sobbing Madeline away. Dominic's entire future had been a trap set by the man he tried to impress. Dominic hadn't just cheated on me. He had cheated himself out of a life for a woman who was literally paid to distract him. I turned on my heel and walked out, the Chicago wind feeling like a victory. Dominic had traded his soul for a title that didn't exist and a woman who was a lie. "Enjoy the fall, Dominic," I muttered, stepping into my car. "It's a long way down from a dream that was never yours." I didn't even have time to take off my coat before the doorbell started ringing like a fire alarm. I checked the security camera. Dominic. He looked like he'd been dragged behind a bus for 5 miles. I opened the door, but I didn't step back to let him in. I stood like a stone wall. Get off my porch, Dominic. You're violating a dozen boundaries just by breathing my air. Audrey, please. He croaked. His $3,000 suit was wrinkled and his eyes were bloodshot. I have nowhere else to go. The police, they're asking questions about the Garrison accounts. They think I stole $1,200,000. Think? You bought a Mistress, a diamond bracelet on a company card, you idiot! I hissed, leaning in so close he could see the pure contempt in my eyes. You didn't just lose your job. You lost your mind. Why are you here? Go ask your innocent Serafina for a place to sleep. She's gone. She blocked me. She took the car, the jewelry. She even took the cash I had in the safe. He surged forward, trying to grab my hand, but I slapped it away with enough force to make him wince. She was a plant, Audrey. Garrison set me up. He needed a scapegoat for his own skimming, and I was the perfect fool. Correction. You are the perfect fool, I barked. You threw away a 15-year marriage and your son's respect for a girl who was literally on the payroll to ruin you. You didn't just fall for a scam, Dominic. You volunteered for it because you were too greedy to see the truth. Audrey, I'm your husband. You're my ex-husband, I corrected, my voice dropping to a deadly, quiet tremor. The man I married was a senior analyst with a soul. The man standing in front of me is a disgraced embezzler who abandoned his family. I'm not your safety net. I'm the woman who's going to watch you drown and enjoy the view. Just then, Caleb stepped into the hallway behind me. His face went pale when he saw the wreckage of his father on the doorstep. Dad? Caleb's voice was flat, devoid of the warmth it used to hold. Caleb, son, tell your mom to let me in. I've had a bad day, a really bad... A bad day? Caleb walked up beside me, his height nearly matching Dominic's now. You told me Mom was holding you back. You said you were going to be a billionaire. Is this what a billionaire looks like? Standing on our porch, begging for a handout? Dominic flinched as if the boy had struck him. Caleb, I did it for us. I wanted to give you everything. You gave me a front row seat to how a coward acts. Caleb snapped. Go away, Dad. You don't live here. You don't belong here. I felt a surge of pride so strong it almost overrode my anger. I looked at Dominic one last time. You heard him. Get out before I call the cops and tell them exactly where to find their missing $1.2 million suspect. I slammed the door and locked it. My heart was thumping against my ribs like a trapped bird. Are you okay, Mom? Caleb asked, his hand on my shoulder. I am, I said, taking a shaky breath and straightening my spine. But your grandmother is probably going to be the next one at the door, and she's not going to be as quiet as he was. I was right. 2 hours later, the phone rang. It was the Cook County Jail. Madeline had been arrested for assault and battery following the lobby brawl. She had one phone call, and she chose me. Audrey, you have to bail me out, she wailed through the static. That tramp Serafina is pressing charges. They have me in a cell with common criminals. Well, Madeline, I said, leaning back in my designer chair and sipping a glass of bourbon. Considering your son is about to be a common criminal himself, I'd say you're exactly where you belong. I'm not spending a single cent of my $7.2 million to get you out of a mess you cheered for. You ungrateful bitch! I am Caleb's grandmother. No, I replied coldly. You're just a woman who realized too late that gold plating a piece of trash doesn't make it a treasure. Enjoy the bunk bed, Madeline. I hear the orange jumpsuits are sophisticated this time of year. I hung up. The silence of the house felt like a symphony. The vultures were finally starving, and I was just getting started. The Garrison financial scandal broke at dawn, saturating every news outlet in Chicago. Dominic's face, panicked, sweating, and utterly broken, was plastered across the screen. He looked like a man who had realized too late that he wasn't the lead actor in his own life, just a sacrificial lamb. I was sipping my coffee, watching the stock price of Garrison Financial plummet, when my lawyer, Marcus, called. "Audrey, I just got a call from the district attorney. Dominic is trying to cut a deal. He's claiming that the $7,200,000 you took in the divorce settlement belongs to the company. He's telling them you're hiding his stolen assets." A cold, venomous laugh escaped my throat. He's got balls, I'll give him that. Tell the DA that every cent I have is court-ordered and legally vetted. If Dominic needs to pay back the $1,200,000 he embezzled for his princess, he can sell his soul. Oh, wait. He already did that, and it didn't even cover the down payment on his mistakes. "I figured," Marcus said. "But Madeline's bail is set at $150,000. She's been calling my office every 10 minutes, shrieking that you're robbing the family legacy." "What do you want to do?" "Let her rot," I snapped. Maybe the cold floor of a precinct cell will remind her that her legacy is currently a pile of ashes. Around noon, I headed to the city for a meeting with a private investigator. As I pulled out of my driveway, a battered black sedan swerved in front of my SUV. Dominic jumped out. He looked like a ghost, eyes sunken, hair matted, his expensive suit wrinkled and stained. I didn't get out. I lowered my window just an inch. "You're violating a restraining order, Dominic. Move the car before I call the cops." "Audrey, please!" He slammed his hands against my window. His face contorted in a pathetic sob. "The Garrison lawyers are framing me for everything. They're claiming I groomed Serafina. Garrison told the police he had no idea about the affair or the money. They're going to give me 15 years. 15 years? Sounds like you'll finally have time to finish that vision you were bragging about," I said, my voice as hard as granite. "How can you be this cruel?" he shrieked. "I am the father of your son. If I go to prison, Caleb's life is over. Is that what you want? To destroy our son's reputation just to get back at me?" I turned off the engine and stepped out of the car. I walked straight into his space, forcing him back until he hit his own sedan. I was a head shorter, but in that moment, I felt like a giant. "Don't you dare use Caleb as a shield," I hissed, my face inches from his. "You didn't care about his reputation when you were playing big man in executive suites with a mistress. You didn't care about his future when you were skimming company funds to buy a girl diamond bracelets. You chose this, Dominic. You chose the glitter over the gold. Now you get to live with the rust." "I'll sign over everything," he whispered, breaking down. "I'll disappear. Just give me the $150,000 for Mom's bail and $500,000 for a private defense attorney. Please, Audrey, for the sake of the 15 years we had." "Those 15 years ended the second you called me an anchor," I said, my voice dropping to a deadly whisper. "The answer is no. I wouldn't give you a nickel if it meant saving you from the electric chair." Just then, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I answered on speaker. "Is this Audrey Miller?" A sharp, regal voice asked. "Speaking. This is Diana Garrison, Mr. Garrison's wife. I believe you and I have a common interest in making sure our husbands get exactly what they deserve. I hear you have the internal logs that prove Arthur, my husband, was the one who actually authorized those transfers." Dominic's jaw dropped. The color drained from his face until he looked like a bleached bone. He realized the two women he had underestimated, his average wife and his socialite boss's wife, were now holding the rope around his neck. "I have the logs, Mrs. Garrison," I said, a slow, predatory smile spreading across my lips. "And I'd be delighted to share them." I hung up and looked at the shell of the man before me. "You're finished, Dominic. The old car didn't just move out of the way. It turned around and ran you over." I got back in my SUV, revved the engine, and forced him to scramble out of my way as I drove toward the future he had tried so hard to steal. The meeting with Diana Garrison took place in a secluded corner of an upscale tea house in the Gold Coast. She was exactly what Serafina wasn't: poised, timeless, and carrying an aura of quiet lethality. She didn't look like a woman whose husband had been cheating. She looked like a general preparing for a final assault. "You look better than the report suggested, Audrey," Diana said, her eyes scanning me with professional precision. "Usually, women in your position are messier." "I don't have time to be messy, Mrs. Garrison," I replied, placing an encrypted flash drive on the table between us. "I have a son to raise and a debt of vengeance to collect. I assume you're here because you want to take back the company your father built." Diana smiled, a razor-thin expression. "My husband, Arthur, forgot that I own 60% of the Garrison Financial voting shares through my family trust. He thought he could use your pathetic ex-husband as a shield for his extracurricular spending. He planned to pin the entire $1.2 million on Dominic and fire him, thinking the scandal would die there. But Dominic was too stupid to realize he was being set up as a fall guy," I added. "He thought he was being promoted for his talent. It turns out his only talent was being a convenient idiot." "Exactly," Diana said, sliding a folder toward me. "Inside is the evidence that Arthur was the one who signed off on the offshore transfers Dominic managed. Dominic didn't embezzle that money alone. He followed Arthur's digital footprint. If you testify that Dominic confessed this to you, I can trigger the morality clause in Arthur's contract and strip him of his CEO title by Monday." I leaned back, my mind racing. "And what happens to Dominic?" "He goes to prison, Audrey. Maybe for 5 years instead of 10 if he cooperates against Arthur. Does that bother you?" I thought about the way Dominic looked at me when he said I was an anchor. I thought about Madeline calling me average. I thought about Caleb's face when he realized his father was a fraud. 5 years isn't long enough," I said coldly, "but it's a start." The next day, I received a frantic call from the precinct. Madeline had finally used her one phone call to reach a lawyer, but since I'd blocked her, she was now sending messengers. Dominic's cousins. I ignored them all. I spent the afternoon at Caleb's soccer game. Watching him run across the field, free and untroubled by his father's sins, reinforced my resolve. I was building a wall of gold and steel around him. When I returned home, I found Madeline sitting on my porch. She had been released on a low-interest bail bond, likely funded by the last of Dominic's hidden emergency cash. She looked ancient. The hum-hun, arrogant woman was gone, replaced by a desperate creature in a stained silk blouse. "Audrey, you have to talk to the Garrisons!" she screamed, stumbling toward me as I got out of the car. "They're taking everything! They froze Dominic's pension! They're suing me for the jewelry he bought me!" "Get off my property, Madeline," I said, my voice like a serrated blade. "I told you before, I am not your ATM, and I am not your savior. He's your husband! You shared a bed for 15 years! And he shared a bed with a club girl for 2 months while you cheered him on," I retorted, stepping into her space until she backed into a porch pillar. "You wanted a new model, remember? You said the old car had to move out of the way. Well, the old car is now a tank, and I'm rolling right over your family! You monster! You're destroying your son's father! Dominic destroyed himself the moment he thought his family was disposable, I snapped. Go to the shelter, Madeline. Or maybe check if Serafina has a spare couch. Oh, wait, she's the one who turned over the state's evidence to Diana Garrison this morning. Even the mistress is smarter than you. Madeline collapsed onto the stairs, wailing. I didn't feel a flicker of sympathy. I felt a profound sense of justice. As I walked into my house and locked the door, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. A burner phone Dominic must have bought. Dominic. Audrey, I'm at the pier. I have nothing left. Please. Just $50,000 to get a lawyer who isn't appointed by the state. I'll give you anything. I'll sign away my parental rights. Just don't let me go to jail. I stared at the screen. He was willing to sell his son just to stay out of a cell. My hand shook with a fury so intense, I nearly broke the phone. I typed back a single sentence. Audrey, keep your rights, Dominic. You'll need something to think about while you're counting the bars on your cell door. Caleb doesn't have a father anymore. He has a legend of what happens to men who trade their souls for shadows. I blocked the number. The alliance with Diana was moving forward. By Monday, the Garrison Empire would belong to a woman who knew how to rule it, and the men who tried to play us would be exactly where they belonged, at the very bottom. The weeks that followed were a masterclass in calculated destruction. Diana Garrison didn't just want a divorce. She wanted an execution. With the financial logs I provided, she systematically dismantled Arthur Garrison's defense, proving that he had used Dominic as a human shield for his own embezzlement. I sat in my new office, the skyline of Chicago spread out before me like a map I had finally learned to read. My private investigator had just sent over the final report on Serafina. Her real name was Tiffany Vance, a former cocktail waitress who had been on Arthur's payroll for 3 years. She wasn't just a mistress. She was a professional honey trap used to compromise ambitious men like Dominic. The intercom buzzed. Ms. Miller, there's a woman here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's about a family emergency. Send her in, I said, already knowing who it was. Madeline stumbled into the office. She looked like she had aged 20 years in 20 days. Her designer clothes were wrinkled, and the arrogance that used to define her had been replaced by a frantic, twitchy desperation. Audrey, you have to stop this, she wailed, collapsing into the chair opposite my desk. The bank is foreclosing on my house. They say Dominic used it as collateral for a private loan to buy that woman a condo. I have nowhere to go. I didn't offer her water. I didn't even offer her a tissue. I simply leaned back and watched her crumble. That sounds like a Dominic problem, Madeline. Or perhaps a you problem, considering you're the one who encouraged him to chase a younger, richer life. How can you be so cold? She shrieked, her voice cracking. I am your mother-in-law. I helped raise Caleb. You spent every weekend telling Caleb his mother wasn't sophisticated enough for his father. I shot back, my voice like a whip. You told Dominic I was a burden. Well, look at your unburdened son now. He's facing 12 years in a federal penitentiary, and you're about to be homeless. I'd say the average wife is doing pretty well for herself, wouldn't you? Please, Audrey, she sobbed, reaching across the desk to grab my sleeve. I pulled away as if she were covered in plague. Just $100,000. That's all I need to save the house. It's for Caleb's sake. He should have a grandmother with a home. Caleb has a mother with a home, a career, and a future. I stood up, looming over her. He doesn't need a grandmother who values gold over blood. You wanted a high society life, Madeline? Go find it on the street. Maybe you can sell those pearls you're wearing. Oh wait, the DA? Already flagged them as stolen property bought with embezzled funds. Madeline's face went white. She clutched the necklace, her eyes darting around like a trapped animal. You told them? I told them everything, I whispered. I'm the one who gave Diana Garrison the receipts for every piece of jewelry Dominic bought you over the last 6 months. Every gift was a nail in his coffin, and you were the one holding the hammer. Just then, my cell phone rang. It was the detention center. Dominic. I put it on speaker. What do you want, Dominic? I'm busy watching your mother beg. Audrey, please. His voice was broken, barely a whisper. Arthur testified against me. He's claiming I acted alone. He's pinning the whole $1.2 million on me. Serafina, Tiffany. She told the DA I was the mastermind. They're offering me a deal. 10 years, if I confess. If I don't, they're going for the maximum. 20 years. I looked at Madeline. She was staring at the phone, her mouth hanging open in horror. 20 years, I mused. Caleb will be 33 when you get out. He'll be a man. He'll probably have a family of his own. A family that will never know your name. Audrey, don't do this. Tell them the truth. You know I'm not a mastermind. You know I'm too stupid to have done this alone. I know, I said, a cold smile touching my lips. But the world doesn't care if you're a mastermind or a fool, Dominic. They only care about who's left holding the bag. And you fought so hard to grab that bag, didn't you? You pushed me out of the way just to reach it. I'll do anything. I'll testify against Arthur. I'll tell them he's the one who skimmed the money. It's too late. Diana already gave them the proof. They don't need your testimony, Dominic. They just need someone to punish, and you're the perfect candidate. I hung up the phone. Madeline let out a low, animalistic moan and slumped to the floor. Get her out of here, I told my security guard. And if she ever sets foot in this building again, have her arrested for trespassing. As they dragged her out, her screams echoing down the hallway, I felt a strange sense of calm. The vultures had finally finished eating each other. There was nothing left but the bones. I picked up the phone and dialed my realtor. The penthouse in the city? The one Dominic and I used to live in? I heard it's back on the market after the Garrison foreclosure. Buy it. I want to turn it into a shelter for women who've been discarded by ambitious men. It's time that place saw some real power. The penthouse I once called home was no longer a sanctuary of shared dreams. It was a crime scene of the soul. After Dominic was forced into a fire sale to cover his mounting legal fees, I bought the property back through an anonymous holding company. I didn't buy it to live in. I bought it to reclaim the ground where they had tried to bury me. As I walked through the hollowed-out living room, the echoes of Madeline's insults and Dominic's cold demands seemed to bleed from the very walls. Mom, why are we back here? Caleb asked, his voice echoing in the empty space. He looked at the exact spot on the floor where his grandmother had tossed that manila envelope, the severance package for my 15 years of devotion. Because, Caleb, I said, my voice steady and cold. I want you to see that power isn't about what you take from people. It's about what you build after they think they've destroyed you. This place is no longer a monument to your father's greed. It's the headquarters for my new firm. My phone buzzed, a restricted number. I knew the vibration. It was the frantic hum of a cornered rat. I answered and put it on speaker. Audrey. Dominic's voice was thin, reeking of the desperation found only in a man who had lost his shadow. "I'm out on a signature bond. Arthur's lawyers. They're threatening me. They want me to disappear. They offered me $50,000 to catch a bus to Mexico and never come back. They said if I stay and testify, I'm a dead man." "Then I'd start packing, Dominic," I replied, a dark, humorless smile touching my lips. "Though I doubt $50,000 covers the cost of a new identity, let alone a new conscience." "I can't leave like this. I haven't seen Caleb. Please, just let me see my son one last time. I'm at the park near the old neighborhood. If you have any heart left—" "Heart?" I interrupted, my voice rising with a sharp, jagged edge. "You used my heart as a stepping stone. You don't get to appeal to my humanity when you traded yours for a chance to be a garrison. If you're at the park, stay there. We're coming. But don't expect a hug, Dominic. Expect a reckoning." I drove to the park with a calculated fury. Caleb sat beside me, silent. I didn't hide the truth from him anymore. He deserved to see the wreckage of the man he once looked up to. We found Dominic sitting on a rusted bench near the pond. He looked like a vagrant. His $4,000 suit was gone, replaced by a cheap hoodie, his eyes darting with paranoia. "Caleb! Son!" He stood up, but I stepped in front of my son like a wall of granite. "Stay back, Dominic," I warned. "You're a flight risk and a disgraced felon. You don't get to play dad today." "Audrey, please, I've lost everything. The house, the career. Madeline is staying in a church basement and she's lost her mind. She won't stop screaming about the inheritance." "She's exactly where she belongs," I said. "And so are you. You wanted the fast lane? Well, this is the wall at the end of it." Suddenly, a sleek black SUV pulled up. Diana Garrison stepped out, her presence radiating cold authority. Dominic's face went from sallow to a ghostly, translucent white. "Dominic Miller," Diana said, her voice like the snap of a whip. "I believe you have some internal memos that belong to my family's estate. Memos you tried to use for a pathetic blackmail attempt this morning?" Dominic looked at me, then at Diana, his knees shaking. I just needed enough to survive. Arthur promised me." "Arthur is currently being processed by the FBI," Diana said coolly. "And Tiffany, your Serafina, just finished her deposition. She told the authorities that you were the mastermind behind the offshore skimming to impress her." "She's lying! She's the one who wanted the diamonds!" "It doesn't matter who wanted them," I chimed in, stepping closer. "What matters is who signed for them. And you signed every single line, Dominic. You were so blinded by the Mistress and the title that you didn't even read the fine print of your own execution." The sirens began to wail in the distance, closing in. I looked down at Dominic, who had collapsed onto the grass, sobbing. "Caleb," I said, "anything you want to say?" Caleb looked at the man on the ground with a chilling detachment. "You told me to always win, Dad, but looking at you, I think I'd rather just be honest. Goodbye." I turned my back on the sirens, walking toward my car. The old car was driving away, and the new model was headed straight for a prison cell. The courtroom was as cold as a tomb. I sat in the front row, wearing a tailored charcoal suit that cost more than Dominic's remaining life savings. Beside me sat Diana Garrison. We weren't friends, but we were architects of the same destruction. Arthur Garrison sat at the defense table, his expensive lawyers whispering frantically in his ear. But the real show was Dominic. He sat 3 chairs away, slumped, looking like a ghost haunting his own trial. He had no private counsel. He had a public defender who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "The state calls Audrey Miller to the stand," the bailiff announced. I walked to the stand with my head held high. I didn't look at Dominic until I was sworn in. When I finally turned my gaze to him, he flinched. He looked like he wanted to disappear into the floorboards. "Ms. Miller," the prosecutor began, "can you identify these financial logs?" "I can," I said, my voice projecting to the back of the room. "I maintained our joint accounts for 15 years. I noticed the first irregular transfer of $200,000 the same week my husband began his special project with the CEO's office. He told me it was a bonus. In reality, it was the first payment for his soul." I spent the next 2 hours dismantling every lie Dominic had ever told. I presented the emails where he bragged about gaming the system to impress Serafina. I showed the records of Madeline's allowance, funded entirely by Garrison Financial's redirected dividends. "He didn't just steal money," I told the jury, leaning forward. "He stole a future from his son. He used his family as a peck shield while he built a life with a woman who was paid to deceive him. He wasn't a victim of Arthur Garrison. He was an enthusiastic accomplice who thought he was too smart to get caught." As I stepped down, Dominic lunged forward, his face twisted in a mask of agony. "Audrey, how can you do this? I loved you! Order!" The judge barked, gavel slamming down. I stopped and looked at him, my expression unreadable. "You didn't love me, Dominic. You loved the comfort I provided while you looked for something better. Now you can find comfort in a 6x9 cell." The verdict came back in record time. Guilty on all counts. Arthur Garrison was sentenced to 12 years. Dominic, due to his direct involvement in the wire fraud and embezzlement, was given 8. I was standing on the courthouse steps when they led them out in handcuffs. A swarm of reporters surrounded us. Madeline was there too, screaming at the police, her clothes tattered and her mind clearly fractured. "Dominic, tell them Audrey set you up!" she shrieked, clawing at the air. Dominic didn't look at her. He looked at me. "Are you happy now, Audrey? You won. You took the money, the house, and now my freedom. Are you satisfied?" I walked down the steps until I was standing right in front of him. I reached out and straightened his prison-issue tie, the last remnant of his vanity. "I didn't take anything that you didn't throw away first, Dominic," I whispered, loud enough for the microphones to catch. "You thought I was an anchor holding you back. It turns out I was the only thing keeping you from sinking. Now that you've cut the rope, enjoy the bottom of the ocean." I turned to the cameras, a calm, professional smile on my face. "I have no further comment. I have a company to run and a son to pick up from school. The Miller-Garrison scandal is over. My life, however, is just beginning." I walked to my waiting car. As we pulled away, I saw Madeline being tackled by security and Dominic being shoved into the back of a transport van. My phone buzzed. A message from Caleb. "Caleb, I saw the news, Mom. Proud of you. Can we get pizza tonight?" I smiled, a real warm smile that reached my eyes for the first time in months. "Yes, Caleb," I whispered to the empty car. "Whatever you want." The vultures were gone. The sky was finally clear. 6 months had passed since the gavel fell. The name Dominic Miller had faded from the headlines, replaced by the rapid ascent of Miller Strategic. I was no longer the wronged wife. I was the CEO of a powerhouse built on the ruins of my old life. I was sitting in my glass-walled office when my assistant brought in a manila envelope. No return address. Inside was a stack of handwritten letters. "Audrey, the walls are closing in. Audrey, Mom is sick. She needs help the state won't provide. Audrey, tell Caleb I'm sorry. Dominic. Even from a cell in Joliet, he was still trying to use me as his safety net. I gathered the letters and fed them into the shredder. The mechanical hum was the only response his self-pity deserved. Later, I drove to a sterile state nursing home. I wasn't there for Dominic. I was there to close a chapter on Madeline. After her breakdown, she had been diagnosed with dementia. I found her staring at a brick wall, clutching a ragged silk scarf, the last scrap of her sophisticated life. Madeline, I said. She turned, her eyes flickering with the dying embers of venom. Evelyn? No, Audrey, she sneered. Where's my son? He's supposed to take me to the opera. My dress is being tailored. There is no opera, Madeline, I said coldly. Dominic is in prison, and you're here because you have nowhere else to go. You did this, she hissed. You were always jealous of our greatness. I'm here to tell you I've set up a basic trust for your care, I interrupted, leaning in. Not for you, but so Caleb doesn't have to carry the guilt of his grandmother dying in a gutter. Every month you sit in this room, you'll remember that the average woman you despise is the only reason you have a bed. That is your punishment. I walked out, leaving her screams behind. That evening, I met Diana Garrison. She had successfully purged her husband's loyalists and taken control of the empire. I heard about Madeline, Diana said, raising a martini. You're softer than I thought. It's not softness, Diana. It's closure. If I let them starve, they still have power over my emotions. If I keep them in a cage I built, I'm the one in control. As I drove home, I passed our old penthouse. A new family lived there now. I felt no regret. I had traded a house of cards for a fortress of iron. I pulled into my driveway and saw Caleb in the garage, working on an old Mustang. He was covered in grease, laughing, whole and happy. I sat in the car, listening to the silence of my success. My phone buzzed. A final notification from the prison system. Notification. Inmate 8832, 1-Miller. Dominic. Request for visitation. Denied. I deleted it. The vultures were gone. I was finally home. 1 year later. The gala for the Women in Leadership Foundation was held at the most prestigious ballroom in Chicago. I stood at the top of the marble staircase, the soft glow of the chandeliers reflecting off my diamond necklace, a piece I bought for myself with my own hard-earned money. You look like you're plotting a takeover, Audrey, Diana Garrison whispered, stepping up beside me. She looked radiant, having officially rebranded Garrison Financial into Garrison and Miller. We were no longer just survivors, we were partners. I'm not plotting, Diana, I said, looking out at the sea of influential faces. I'm reflecting. A year ago, I was being told I was an anchor. Today, I'm the lighthouse. Well, the lighthouse has a visitor. Diana nodded toward the entrance. I followed her gaze and felt a slight chill. Standing near the door was a woman who looked like a shadow of a person. It was Tiffany, the woman formerly known as Serafina. She was no longer dressed in designer silk. She wore a cheap, faded dress and looked exhausted. She wasn't here to party. She was here to beg. I walked down the stairs, the crowd parting for me like the Red Sea. When I reached her, Tiffany looked up, her eyes filled with fear and desperation. Audrey, please, she whispered. I can't find work. Every firm in the city has blacklisted me because of the scandal. Arthur is in jail, Dominic is in jail, and I'm starving. I looked at the woman who had helped to destroy my marriage. I felt no rage, only a profound sense of distance. You were a tool, Tiffany. Arthur used you to trap Dominic, and you used Dominic to get a taste of a life you didn't earn. You played a dangerous game, and you lost. Please, just a recommendation? A small loan? I don't give loans to people who build their lives on lies, I said, my voice projecting just enough for those nearby to hear. But I'll give you a piece of advice. The next time you try to climb a ladder, make sure it's not leaning against someone else's house. Now, please leave. You're ruining the aesthetic of my evening. Security escorted her out. I didn't look back. The night ended with me standing on the balcony of my new office, the city lights twinkling like fallen stars. Caleb walked in wearing his first tuxedo. He was 15 now, tall, confident, and heading to an elite leadership camp in the morning. "Ready to go, Mom?" he asked, checking his watch, the same brand Dominic used to covet, but bought with the trust fund I had secured for him. "Almost, Caleb," I said, turning to him. I just wanted to take a moment to look at how far we've come. "We're doing great, Mom. Better than great." He hugged me, a strong, sincere embrace. "And hey, I got a letter today. From the prison. I burned it without opening it." I felt a surge of pride that warmed me more than any champagne. "Good boy. Some ghosts don't deserve to be heard." As we walked out of the building together, my phone buzzed one last time. It was a news alert. Arthur Garrison's appeal denied. Dominic Miller's sentence extended for attempted bribery of a guard. I didn't even click on the link. I dropped the phone into my bag and stepped into the cool night air. The old car was gone, replaced by a woman of iron who knew exactly where she was going. The vultures were starving, the empire was mine, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't just a never lose yourself trying to be someone's everything when they treat you like nothing. Build your own strength and keep your own wallet, because at the end of the day, your self-worth is the only investment that never fails. Viving. I was ruling. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, please like, comment your thoughts below, and follow for more powerful stories coming your way.